following Chalk Talk is brought to you by Isolite, the emergency lighting experts. Stay educated, my friends.
It's hard to believe today is the last day of September. A little bit of history this morning. Did you know in 1954, on this date, the U.S. Navy commissioned the first nuclear submarine, the Nautilus? That has really nothing to do with Isolite other than the fact that we are known for our nuclear exit signs. Just want to drop a little bit of knowledge on you this morning. I'm Western Regional Sales Manager Greg Keel, along with Eastern Regional Sales Manager Matt Bird, and thanks for joining us for our September Chalk Talk. We're doing a little different format this month. Our host, Evan Ackman, is actually going to be giving a live demonstration of the E3MINI. Evan, take it away.
That's great. Thanks, Greg. And thank you all for being here this morning. That's a heck of a fun fact. I think that it was going under the bridges over to Pennsylvania this morning because it took me like an hour and a half to go 13 miles, which was a little bit challenging. But again, that's not related to what we're talking about today. As Greg mentioned, we're going to be talking about the E3MINI, and we've done some E3MINI Chalk Talks before, but we thought we'd do something a little bit different. As always, I'd like to start with a little bit of background. We'll talk about some of the basic features, some of the more advanced features with the dimming integration on the slides. But then the meat and potatoes of this presentation, I really want to get into a live look, and we'll turn the camera on and we'll talk about the product behavior. We'll show exactly how it works. We'll put a little bit of like context to those features that we talked about, and we'll talk about why they're important, and hopefully the live demonstration will help you understand exactly why this inverter is so beneficial and it's so innovative. And it really has a lot of places in our lineup and in your lineups as well. As always, we'll end with some sales tools. We'll talk about some of the options that you saw on the inverter, and then we'll put up our information for how to get more training, more Chalk Talks, more whatever you want from us. One thing of note, I appreciate you guys sort of bearing with us on this one. This is the first live Chalk Talk we've done. Usually it's just slides or video. So, turning the camera on is a little bit more of a technical challenge. And so, hopefully we're going to be able to do more of these. One of the reasons why we wanted to start here was we have some other Chalk Talks coming up that we want to have, be live with, actual products opened and hands and whatnot. And so just sort of smoke testing this here. If everything works, that's all well and good. If you guys have suggestions, we'd love to hear those too. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Now, the E3MINI was released earlier this year, and it replaced our IMI mini inverter. And the reason why we did that is we thought there was some innovation that was necessary in the industry. So if you've heard me give like an actual dedicated inverter presentation before, sometimes jokingly I call this baby's first inverter. And I'm trying to get a laugh when I do that, but what I really mean is that everything's in the box, right? Sometimes I call it the value series, but the real idea here is that you don't really have to go off the reservation. If you're going to do the E3MINI, everything you need is right there. And so things like that field configurable 120 or 277 volt input, now you don't have to know, anything about the electrical system at order time. So if it's going to go sit on a distributor shelf and maybe get applied to, 1, 2, 3 different jobs, or if at the state when you're, getting quotes or orders, the model number doesn't change, and so you don't have to go get new quotes if the voltage changes. It makes it very easy. The right thing always shows up on site because it's configurable on site. The multi-purpose outputs we think are very innovative. Every E3MINI has one dedicated normally on output, and then it has 3 outputs that are configurable, and they can be configured between a normally off circuit and a switched circuit or a dimmed circuit, which we'll talk about here in a couple seconds. The benefit here is that you don't need any additional hardware, and you can get multiple zones of control all from one mini inverter, which really allows you to do just physically larger areas to get to that emergency light level without having to add additional hardware. So it just makes it so that this thing can be applied in a bigger variety of applications. We won't beat into the ground exactly how to do the mathematical derivation of crest factor, but the important thing is that means that we can deliver lots of current as compared to our nominal operating current. And what that means to you and to your customers is that no one ever gets left in the dark. We don't have problems getting lights on. I can confidently say that, in my time here over the last 3 years, we don't really have to answer calls about there was an emergency and my lights didn't come on. That is so baked into our DNA that we will optimize for that all the time. And then the other cool thing about this product is the field configurable transfer times. And what that is we know that the trend in the lighting controls industry is to move towards things like smart power packs. And some of those smart power packs have UL 924 listings, but they operate in a very particular way. They require there to be a power outage for a long period of time so that they can observe it, and then they know to go into their override mode where they ignore control signals. Historically, we and the rest of the industry has always thought that there's the faster that you can make that transfer, the better. Well, in this instance, that's actually not true. And so we can still do that fast transfer time, but we also have configurable options for 1 and 2 second transfers over to emergency so that we can be compatible with those smart power packs that exist out there. And the integration with the lighting controls industry, or being a lighting controls integrated first product, doesn't just stop at those switched outputs and the configurable transfer times. This has dimming as a first class citizen, so it's compatible with 0 to 10 volt and Dolly dimming systems. And that really means a couple different things. Obviously, in normal mode, you can dim it through the lighting controls, but then you can also have it set to a fixed dim level in emergency mode. And what that allows you to do is, if you don't need the full capacity of the lights to get to that 1 foot candle magic number on the floor, you can crank them down and add more lights so that you can get a physically larger area as a part of your emergency lighting system. And so it really just is trying to make this thing as flexible and as useful as possible. And yeah, I really want to show you that. And so, as I mentioned before, what we're going to see is normal mode, emergency mode, how that dimming integration works. And then we'll talk about the wiring compartment a little bit, just to show how all of this stuff works and comes together. And so this is where the presentation gets a little bit clunky, because I got to shift to a camera. So if you bear with me, and the right camera is up there, and hopefully you're seeing that now. Now, for those of you who have not ever met me, you might think that I'm just a disembodied voice. I actually do exist as a real person. So you get to see me here today, and that's all well and good. More important than me, though, is what you see on this wall in front of you. So I'll just walk through everything here. Obviously, the E3MINI inverter sort of centrally placed here. This is the magic in this system. But what we have here is a normally on circuit. So this is an independent zone up here on the upper left. We have a normally off circuit. So this is going to behave off in normal operation. We don't have an emergency right now. When there is an emergency, this will turn on. And then I have 2 controlled zones. So over here, I've got 2 wall box 0 to 10 volt switch and dim controls. 1 on this zone and 1 on this zone. And so this is where those multi-purpose outputs really come into play. So as I mentioned before, 1 normally on is always there. And then these devices are configured. So these 2 on the right are actually controlled by these lighting controls. You can see these here. It's a little bit hard to see, but they can be dimmed. The camera kind of compensates for it a little bit. So it doesn't look like it dims a lot, but these are 0 to 10 volt dimmers, and it does whatever the fixture is compatible with. And then we have that 1 configurable output set to be normally off. So let's just put this thing into emergency mode to show exactly how that works. So I'm just going to dim these down to make this example work. But if I kill power here, these things come on. And as I mentioned, so what happens now is the normally on obviously stays on because it just needs to be on at all times. The normally off has turned on because we're in emergency mode, and that's how these devices work. And then that dimming signal and the control signal over here has been completely overridden. So no matter what I'm doing on these lighting controls, these are overridden and they just stay on. So we are now in emergency mode. That dimming integration has disconnected all of that 0 to 10 volt magic that's happened. All of our circuits have gone to normally on. Now, as I mentioned, that dimming integration actually does a little bit more for us than just overriding that dimming signal. And as you saw on the pictures, we have these little twisty pots here. And what you can do is, if you have a screwdriver that's small enough, which I think I do, and I hope that this shows up in the video, it's dimming, but if I look on the screen, it doesn't show it a ton. but I can actually dim these things down to a much lower light level. You can sort of see it by the relative brightness between number 1 and number 2 here. And so now in emergency mode, I've diminished the light output of those emergency fixtures to a fixed and known light level. So it's compliant with NFPA 101, but it's a lower light level. So now I can put physically more fixtures on there, and I don't run out of battery capacity. So I could do just larger and larger areas. Now, one of the things that people ask is, how does this thing actually get wired up and work? And I'm going to kind of move the camera, and I hope that this doesn't cause anyone to have sort of some seizures or anything. But so just to kind of highlight what you see here, I mentioned before, these are those configurable outputs. So command signals in so that we can control it. And then these are the outputs. So you can see what we said before, normally on, and then 3 configurable circuits over here. This is that 120 and 277 volt configuration. So this is a 120 volt system because it's plugged into my wall. But if it were 277, all you would do is you would take this jumper and move it down 1 slot. And then over here on the right-hand side, this is where you see those 0 to 10 volt wires. So there, you can see the violet and gray wires coming in. And the way that this works, and I'll just pull this back out here. Maybe next time I'll invest in a cameraman. Greg, you can come in and do that for me. There we go. So the way that this operates is these 0 to 10 volt dimmers go up into the raceway, they go down into the inverter, and then the inverter spits it back out up to these fixtures. And the way that that operates is when you're in normal mode and everything's okay, that just gets passed straight through the inverter back out to the fixtures. And so they just behave like controlled fixtures. And so you can see, as it sees that the power has come back, everything sort of turns back on and operates as we saw before. And then when there is an emergency, this stuff is totally disconnected and the inverter just takes over the control of that circuit. And so that's why we can do things like dimming in emergency mode. That's why the control signals are all overridden. And that's really how this inverter comes together. This is admittedly a contrived example because it's all sitting on a wall, but this mirrors the 99% case for how this inverter system operates in the field. And so I hope that was beneficial for you to see how that all comes together. I'd like to just close out over our last few minutes here with just a couple more slides as a reminder for what you've seen. Let's turn the camera off there. So as I mentioned, obviously it's 125 VA inverter, that's the small one. This has the FD option in there. So in addition to that 0 to 10 volt integration, there's also a fire alarm signal input. If there were a fire, this device could go into emergency mode, overriding those zones of dimming. And as I mentioned in the live part of it, there's 4 independent zones there. One was normally on, one was normally off, but it was dimmed in emergency mode. And then 2 of them were switched and dimmed both in normal mode, and then they could be dimmed again in emergency mode. So that's what you're seeing. And just to call it out and be very explicit, the thing that you didn't see here, if you were using, our competitors' inverters, even our old IMI inverter, you would need a lot of hardware to actually do everything that you just saw. So in addition to the inverter, you would have needed at least 3 ELCD type devices. But because the E3MINI is designed with everything just built into it, you don't actually need any additional hardware to get a large amount of functionality. And so that's what I mean when I say it's kind of our all-in-one, it's baby's first inverter, it's the value series. You don't have to worry about it. It's not complicated in terms of how to specify and use it. It really is the right solution for just a ton of different jobs. And none of this information, well, none of it's new. We have spec sheets and drawings and wiring diagrams already available on the web page. The wiring diagrams put a more engineering-y view onto what you've just seen. It's sort of, you'll be able to line up exactly how that wall applies to those drawings now, hopefully. And then as always, as a follow-up to this, we're going to send out a link to the video of me giving the presentation. If you want to show it to your kids as a fun aside, you can certainly do that. Probably more likely other people in your agency or your customers could watch it. And then if you want to give the presentation yourself, the PDF version of it or the slides version of this will be up on our webpage as well. One note here, I hope you saw that we saw a price book go out yesterday. We're going to send another correction version of it out today. There's one price that's incorrect, so you're going to see another price book go out later today. The effectivity date is still tomorrow, but keep your eyes peeled for that. Otherwise, I'm Evan. I've now proved to you that I'm a real person and not just a headshot and a disembodied voice. I have different glasses and a very different hairstyle right now, but same old me. Greg and Matt are on the line. As always, we certainly appreciate everything that you guys do. You're the ones out there sort of fighting for business on our behalf, and we definitely appreciate that. So anything that we can do to support you, whether that's helping you with your first E3MINI design, or if you want additional training on this or anything else that we do, please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out to any or all of us. We can get on a webinar. We can come visit you. We exist to assist you guys in any way possible. I'll certainly take questions if there are any. Otherwise, thanks for joining us. Have a good day.